Welcome to Passion for Sound, the channel dedicated to thorough and honest reviews of headphones, earphones, DACs, headphone amps, other components and accessories. Basically everything audio related except power amps and passive speakers. My name's Lachlan and my goal is to explore and discuss all kinds of audio topics, even the controversial ones, to help us all find more enjoyment from music. Thanks for watching and enjoy the video. Hey folks, welcome to another Passion for Sound audio review. As you'll probably notice, I've got a very different lighting setup for this video, so before I even get into the content for this video, I just wanted to say I'd love it if you'd let me know what you think of this lighting setup versus my normal brighter lighting setup. Do you have a preference? Is there something you like about one or the other for a particular reason? Whatever you'd like to share, I'd love to hear your feedback. Today's review focuses on a product type that I don't tend to do many reviews of these days, but it's kind of partly a holdover from before I changed my scheduling and therefore had to get more picky about the reviews, but also a review with two products that I actually think it's a good idea to know about. Specifically what we have here are the EarFun Free 2 earphones, true wireless earphones, and a very similar product in the Edifier TWS1 Pro. In both cases, these earphones retail for $60 US, and so they're a very affordable option in the true wireless earbud game. I won't bore you with the details of how this review came about, but suffice to say I ended up with both of these models in my collection at exactly the same time, and after listening to both, I thought it was worth you knowing about them. I've specifically scheduled this video for release now because it's close to Black Friday and there's a good chance that either or both of these might have some special deals around that time. Now I have no confirmation of whether or not these will be on special, but I think there's a good chance that through Amazon or somewhere similar you might pick up a deal. And so let me tell you about which one I think is the better IEM, but I'm going to start off by saying that both of them are excellent. You really can't go too wrong, but I do have a favourite. As I've already mentioned, both of these IEMs come in at $60 US as their list price. Of course, there's always going to be specials, reductions, that sort of thing, but they both have a suggested retail price of $60 US. And the similarities don't stop there. Even just looking at them on the desk here, you can probably see that they come in very similar sized cases, so much so that they could come out of the same factory with just a slightly different design. And that continues on to the earbuds on the inside as well. Both of them use a very similar design. Now I'm not saying they are from the same factory, I'm not saying they're the same, they're clearly not the same, but there is so much similar about them. They use this kind of bulky body design. They both have a very similar kind of bulky shape to the design where the ear tip sits forward. They use quite stubby ear tips there as well. Everything's quite similar, different, but very similar. Beyond the physical similarities, there's also some feature similarities. Both earbuds come with what I'm assuming is Bluetooth 5 point something. They don't specifically list it on both models, but they both offer aptX codecs and also the low latency that comes with aptX. It's not aptX HD in either case, so they are still a more basic IEM in terms of the transmission protocols. There's no LDAC and there's no aptX HD, but they do have low latency for gaming, video watching, things like that, and offer some of the most recent versions of Bluetooth for good quality connections. So that means that both are very comparable in terms of connectivity, how easy it is to pair them. They've not lost connectivity when I've been moving around with them in my ears and my phone in my pocket or on a bench. They've had no problems at all. Comfort is also excellent from both of them. They feel very similar in the ear, and if somebody was to do a blind test with me where they inserted one earbud or the other, I don't think there's any way I could tell the difference. So they're equivalently comfortable, which is to say they are both very comfortable and very secure in the ear. Both models offer touch controls, and whilst there's always going to be variation between one model and the next as to how the touch controls work, what they do, things like that, I'm not going to go into depth on that here and say which one's better, which one's worse. I think that's really highly subjective. Suffice to say, both give you touch controls. If you jump through and have a look at the various documentation for these, you'll be able to work out which ones do which with what sorts of presses, and you can work out from that if one of them is better suited for you than the other. The things that really separate these two, other than the sound quality of course, which we'll get to in a moment, is that the EarFun Free 2 do have waterproof rating. They're an IPX7 rating. So for those of you that are going to be sweating a lot in them, potentially out in the rain and the elements, the EarFun Free 2 would be the better choice. There's no talk of any kind of dust or weather resistance from the Edifiers. On the other hand, the Edifier TWS1 Pro do offer longer battery life, both per charge of the actual earbuds, but also overall in terms of the number of charges you can get out of the carry case. If you're not familiar with wireless earbuds, the way these generally work is that you get a certain amount of charge built into the batteries within the actual earbuds, but then these carry cases also have extra batteries which charge the earphones when you put them back in. Now in my experience, both of these have ample charge, both in terms of the cases and the earbuds themselves, so it's not really a big deal the difference between them, but the Edifier does offer a little bit more. The Edifier's quote 12 hours of playtime from the actual earbuds themselves, and a total of 42 hours including the recharge capabilities of the case. So that's a lot of playback time. It's a full waking day, 12 hours of the day. You could have these in your ears and run them without needing to recharge. On the other hand, the earphones offer 7 hours of playing time and 23 hours in total, including the case. Or that might be an additional 23 hours on top of the 7. It's a little bit unclear, but either way, both of them are going to give you plenty of battery time, both in the earbuds and then the additional charge from the cases. So there's really nothing to worry about there. So what really matters most here, and probably what you're here for more than anything else, is to find out how they sound. Before I get into talking specifically about the sound quality of these, I do want to make a general disclaimer, and that is that you can always get better quality sound by spending more money. That's not to say there's a guarantee that spending more will always get you better sound, but I wanted to be clear that as much as I'm going to say how great I think both of these models are, it doesn't mean that they're at the level of something like a Samsung Galaxy Buds Pro or even something like a Palm Quiet Mini. Those are better IEMs at a higher price. And so I did want you to keep that in mind as you hear me talk about these. They are not the best thing ever. They are fantastic for their price, but they are at a price and perform to or slightly beyond that price only. So with that out of the way, let's talk about what you can expect if you buy the EarFun Free 2 or the Edifier TWS1 Pro. Starting off with the EarFun Free 2, it has a slightly V-shaped sound that's punchy and fun and dynamic. But it's a well done V-shape. Sometimes I don't enjoy V-shaped sounds because they can overdo the treble, trying to be too kind of detailed and revealing, but these don't do that. They use a V-shaped tuning, or what I'm hearing as a V-shaped tuning. I haven't measured them, but what I'm hearing as a V-shaped tuning helps to bring a sense of fun and dynamics to the sound. Perhaps the most impressive thing about the Free 2 is they give this great sense of bass extension. Now it's debatable as to whether it actually does extend as far as it sounds, because it could also just be some very clever use of tuning. There's a bit of a bass boost in the lower bass registers of the Free 2, and what that means is that it helps it to sound like the bass goes deeper. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. All that matters is my perception of it is it has this excellent sense of presence and weight in the sub bass. That carries up high enough to give a sense of punch and drive from the bass, but it never goes too far into blurring up the mids and making it sound muddy and warm. It's got a beautiful sub bass and sense of punch, but it's not a rich, thick, warm earphone, far from it. At the other end of the scale, the treble can be just a little bit artificial sounding. There's a slightly metallic kind of tonality to the sound of the Free 2, but it's not bad. It's just the sort of area where I mentioned before, you can get better by spending more money. Overall, it doesn't detract from the sound being engaging and enjoyable from the Free 2. They also produce a really excellent sense of soundstage. The soundstage has good width and it's even got some depth, which is not that common for budget devices of pretty much any sort. So when you do come across one that does that well, it's a little bit special. The image within the soundstage, so the individual placements of notes, is also pretty good for a budget device. It's not kind of better than anything else I've heard, but it's very strong. And I think some of that is to do with that bass tuning I spoke about before. By keeping the bass controlled down low, bringing that emphasis in at the bottom, it's allowing everything above, so the mid-range and the treble, to be clean and crisp and detailed. And so all in all, I think it's an excellently tuned IEM, particularly at the price. And that of course then begs the question how it compares to the TWS1 Pro. And immediately when I put the TWS1 Pro into my ears, they sound a more balanced overall tuning. There's less of that sub-bass lift, there's a little bit less treble emphasis, and that does allow the mids to come forward just a little bit more. They still have a nice sense of bass, and the treble quality is a little bit better, it's a little bit less splashy compared to the Free 2, but there is still plenty of detail and clarity in the treble. By having the bass and the treble reduced slightly, the mids do also come forward a bit more in the mix, and so as I said, the overall tuning is a bit more balanced from the Edifiers. On the other hand though, you're losing out in terms of soundstage. Both the width and the depth are reduced, and that means the ability for it to focus individual sounds cleanly within their own space is also reduced as well. So the soundstage and imaging from the Edifiers isn't quite as strong as the Free 2. If I'd only listened to one earphone or the other, I probably would have had no complaints and would have said very positive things about both of these. But as it is, one of them clearly captured my attention and imagination, whereas the other one was just good. The earphone here that I found to be just good is the Edifier TWS1 Pro. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it, it's a great sounding earphone, and it's one that I would very happily use. It's also the more tonally balanced earphone out of the two, and so there's nothing that would specifically make me go against the Edifier, other than the fact that the EarFun Free 2 is just more fun. Its ability to produce a greater sense of space within the soundstage, the better sense of imaging of each note, and that wonderful, rich, punchy bass that's far enough down in the spectrum that it never gets in the way of the mids and everything sounding clean and clear, that to me is what takes the Free 2 to the next level. Now I say next level, not meaning it's in the next tier of performance, next level meaning that for me, it's a clearly superior IEM by a small but significant margin. As I said, both of these are great. If you're not comparing them side by side like I have, you'd be completely happy with either. If you get a good deal on either of these come Black Friday, I do think if you're in the market for it of course, it's worth snapping one of these up, whichever one you get the deal on. However, if you're in a position where you're looking at both and you can choose either and you're happy to go with either based on price and features and everything else, then I do think the EarFun Free 2 is the one I would go for. Yes, it's got a bit less battery life, but it has got the waterproof capabilities, and it's also, to me, got the better tuning. It's a really fun and enjoyable earphone. I was actually listening to both of these while I was doing some B-roll the other day as part of getting to know both products, and the album I was listening to was Smoke and Mirrors by Imagine Dragons. On both IEMs, the album had drive and energy and punch, but it was on the EarFun Free 2 that I felt really sucked into the music. I was really enjoying every bit of detail and clarity and the dynamics between the bass and the treble. That's what the EarFun Free 2 brought to life, but the Edifier, it showed me it was there, but it didn't kind of connect me and engage me in the same way. So both are excellent, but the Free 2 gets my nod. So if either of these sound good to you, I'll put links down below through to Amazon where you can go and pick these up for yourself. They will be affiliate links, and so any purchases you make do support the channel, and for that I'm always very grateful. I hope you found this review useful. If you have, I'd also ask that you consider subscribing and liking. I've got a heap of fantastic content on the way. But for now, I'll leave you to the music, so happy listening, and I'll see you here next time on Passion for Sound.